There you see Nestea looking hard at that monitor, tapping those keys, preparing for his match against Snute. Guys, welcome back to the round of 16 of WCS America. Yes, we are live in studio. The players are here. I'm super excited. This is super awesome. And again, Monday through Thursday, this is going on. A beautiful purple background behind us, getting into the mode of Heart of the Swarm World Championship Series. I'm axeltoss, joined by axslav. Welcome to our show. Nick, I'm pumped, man.
Today is going to be an excellent day. So many great players here. You mentioned, Snute, Home Story Cup 4 champion.
Yes.
Nestea, the legend himself. And, of course, later on we'll see Sen and Alicia as well.
Of course, we got a bunch of phenomenal matches lined up for you today. This is going to be the first group of the round of 16, the first of 4. We got Nestea, Snute, Alicia, Sen first up. We're going to have a best of 3 between Nestea and Snute. Winner of that will advance to the winner's match. Loser will go to the loser's match. Then we're going to have Alicia versus Sen. They're both here as well. Remember, this is essentially double elimination. If people are essentially confused, it's basically bracket-style groups, double elimination. If you lose, you're not necessarily out. You don't want to lose twice. But, of course, we're about to get into a matchup between Nestea and Snute, a ZVZ. And I was really intrigued when Nestea, he said, literally, he studied a lot of Snute. This guy prepares. It's Nestea. He has a ridiculous amount of championships under his belt. He's won, I think he's top 3 in money earned in all of StarCraft 2. You cannot underestimate this guy.
Extremely talented player. Of course, most of his victories were in the early stages of StarCraft 2. But one thing that's been true for him throughout his career is his Zerg versus Zerg mirror matchup has always been exceptional. Yes. This guy, of course, he's all about mechanics. And in Zerg versus Zerg, where it's so much just about who can produce more Zerg units, that's where Nestea truly excels.
Of course, moving on to his opponent, Snute, one of the only non-Koreans in this tournament, representing Team Liquid. 22 years of age, he hails from Norway, and of course made his name really known after winning Home Story convincingly. I think he only lost literally 2 games in that entire tournament, and that was to Stefano in the semifinals, I want to say. But this guy has gotten super good, and we'll have to see if his success translates to success in this tournament.
That's right. Of course, this tournament, he's up against Nestea in that first match. We talked about Nestea Zerg versus Zerg. But Nestea, in that interview, he talked about how Snute Zerg versus Zerg is so amazing. So clearly a lot of respect on both sides of this matchup.
Of course, we got to see a little bit of a flavor of that in his round of 32 match against Vibe, and the players are waiting. So I'm going to ask if they're ready in the chat, and we're going to get started with the first match of WCS America. And guys, I would like to remind you to get on Twitter, get on Team Liquid, get on Reddit, and let people know this is going on. Join the conversation online, because you do not want to miss these epic matches. Of course, you see the beautiful New York City skyline in the background. The players are ready, and I'm going to hit the start game button. Nick, we've been waiting so long for this point. And again, these matches are so important as the countdown begins, and we get into game number 1.
Of course, game number 1 is going to be on Whirlwind. This is a really nice map for ZVZ, very big and spread out. Of course, Mutalists are almost always the go-to unit in Zerg vs. Zerg, and that's definitely true on this map as well. Now,
that's actually a great point, because Blizzard recently made a little change, Mr. Axslav, and the Spore Crawler kind of destroying metas just by building one.
This is true. Of course, stack defense much stronger now.
Yes.
A big map like Whirlwind, though, when the map control is so important,
right.
I think we still could see that Mutalist play.
All right, we'll definitely keep an eye on that, but let's go ahead and introduce both of our players. In the bottom left-hand location of Whirlwind, we have the Blue Zerg player representing Team Liquid, one of the only non-Koreans remaining in WCS America. He is Snute. And his opponent in the top left-hand location of Whirlwind, we have your Red Zerg player, a legend of the game, a legend of ZVZ. Can his success continue in Heart of the Swarm? In WCS America, he is Nestea.
So here we have the players. Unfortunately, Snute sent his first Overlord in the wrong direction. Nestea sent us in the correct direction.
Well, they both, to be fair, they both sent their Overlords in the same direction.
And this is actually the most efficient way to scout is by going counterclockwise. Of course, in this case, it didn't work out for Snute, but the reason why you want to scout counterclockwise first is because you can see if your opponent is counterclockwise from you, like Snute is to Nestea, you can get straight to their natural very quickly. So Nestea's Overlord is going to get right to Snute's natural, and that's where you want to park your first Overlord in Zerg vs. Zerg. Keep track of when they take that hatchery.
Wow, already a pretty drastic change in both of these openings. Nestea going straight for the 15 hatch, whereas Snute going for the early gas, going for the early pool, which means Nestea investing a lot into that economy at this point in the game. Snute is going to have a little bit more flexibility as far as aggression is concerned. Might get speed, might get a Baneling nest down, but if Nestea isn't careful, he could get caught off guard because Snute does have the ability to take a tech advantage here.
He definitely does. We see Nestea here getting gas before pool, so his speediness won't actually be enormously later than Snute's. Of course, it's still going to be significantly later.
Sure.
The problem for Nestea is going to be if Snute does go for speedings, can he keep up with their speed and take minimal damage? Or if Snute goes for early banings, it actually looks like going straight for the speeding. So Snute's going to have to do something with these speedings, try to convince Nestea to really cut his drone production. And then hopefully he can catch up in economy by taking his own expansion just a little bit later.
So what do you make of this decision? I mean, we're talking about the first game of WCS America. These guys have traveled a long way, all the way from Korea, and they have drastically different thoughts upon their first decisions in this tournament. Nestea going for the 15 hatch, which one might say is a little bit greedy. Snute going for the very safe early gas, early pool. What do you make of these decisions from both these players?
For Snute, you know, it really seems like a build where I think he was hoping Nestea wouldn't scout him quite as fast. Because one of the great aspects of this build, if your opponent doesn't have the overlord close to you, it's very difficult for him to tell if you're doing a Baning all-in or if you're just doing speed then expansion. And then, of course, they have to either overreact to the Baning all-in or, you know, maybe underreact to it, potentially, if they kind of play a little bit of a guessing game. But Nestea, with such fast scout of his opponent, is going to have the Overlord positioned perfectly to spot how much Snute is committing to aggression. And I think this gives Nestea a slight advantage if he can defend correctly.
All right, we're going to have to take a look, of course, keep an eye on that production tab, because if the players are making drones, they're less likely to be doing a lot of aggression, or at least less likely to be going for an all-in. If they halt drone production, that means we're going to see a lot of Baneling aggression across the map, and of course, you know, the receiving player has to be very careful not to die. But as of right now, both these guys mixing in drones. We see a defensive spine crawler here from Nestea. Meanwhile, it looks like for Snute, no defensive spine crawler of any sort, but still making those drones in production. So he's going to send some links, some Banelings across the map, just trying to scare Nestea a little bit. I don't even know if that's possible, though. Is it possible to scare Nestea?
Nestea is as calm as ice, man. Snute coming here with speed. A single Baneling. Nestea should have enough to defend. No, Baneling being taken out for only 2 Zerglings. How much damage can these Speedlings do in the main? They can take out 2-3 drones, actually. That's going to give Snute a nice little lead.
Yeah, that's great. Of course, this goes back to him getting speed a little bit earlier. He was able to take advantage of that very narrow timing. Don't want to lose this Overlord, though. That Overlord from Snute getting over-eager to get into the action. That Queen, I think he's actually going to be able to take him down. It will be very close, Mr. Nick. Get it. Oh my god,
wow.
1 HP. Okay. Well,
That is an Overlord that thanks the fact that Zerg units regenerate right there.
yes, absolutely. We have some Speedlings heading into the natural expansion here of Snute, trying to see what's going on. Sees 2 Banelings. Doesn't want anything to do with those, so they're going to leave right away. Of course, I guess spotting the lack of gases, spotting the drone count, spotting the existence or lack thereof of static defense. 2 Banelings come in here from Nestea, applying a little bit of aggression, but by any means he is not all in. However, behind this, taking a layer, while Snute doesn't even have a layer yet. Started at all.
And of course, Nestea has spotted the gas timing of the gases in Snute's natural.
Yes.
And this tells him that Snute has a substantially later layer tech, and he's not going for very fast mutaplay or anything very super tech orientated, because of course if he was, he would need the 4 gases much faster. So we see Nestea going straight for the Spire. Snute upgrading his
1-1.
Zerglings. Yeah.
So, you know, a timing is going to exist here where Snute can definitely potentially do damage to his opponent before the mutas get out, because Nestea is going to be saving a lot of those resources. He's going to have a lot of minerals, saved up, a lot of gas, so he can get as many mutas out as possible right away. It's going to be up to Snute here to identify exactly what his opponent is doing and perhaps take advantage, because Snute, if he doesn't get a layer soon, he's going to be falling behind pretty drastically as far as tech is concerned, going to get that third on the ground. So this makes me think that he's going to focus on denying the opponent on denying Nestea's third base. But the question I have is, can he get sufficient defenses around that third base before the mutas show up?
Oh, a couple of Banians taking out Speedlings there. Snute does want to put pressure on third base. One thing that's important to notice, he will not have the upgrade advantage until mutas are already out. But even if mutas are out in play, that doesn't make the Speedlings useless, because of course mutas can only be in a certain number of places at a specific time. And if you can force the muta player to stay on the defensive, then of course you don't have to worry about getting too much sack defense. And even if you do need to worry about that counterattack by the mutas Spore crawlers are so much stronger now with the most recent buff that it's much easier to defend yourself.
Looks like Snute could be poking at this third base of Nestea, and
Nestea doesn't have his banelings are a little bit behind. Snute has 4 banelings here. Oh,
Nestea, it's so important he holds his third base. Of course, Snute's third base is getting up right now, and Nestea not applying any aggression to that. So if Snute can take down this third of Nestea, or at least delay it, he's going to have a huge advantage, assuming the mutas don't do too much damage. The production tab, nothing but lings here from Snute. 1-1 is about to finish. Keep in mind, once that finishes, it's going to take 2 shots from the. It's going to take, obviously twice as long to kill the lings from the banelings of Nestea. So Nestea has to be very careful here not to take too much damage.
The mutas are popping out just right now. I don't think they'll be in time to save that hatchery, though. In fact, they're actually counterattacking across the map, picking off some overlords.
The hatchery getting taken out. Is this going to be worth it for Nestea? Muta's going straight into the natural expansion. Spores have already been started here for Snute, and they are going to get finished up. So Nestea has plenty of mutas in the air, but taking down lings on the ground, I'm not sure how worth it that is. One queen getting extremely overeager is going to get taken out by the mutas. Meanwhile, Snute going straight to the natural expansion here of Nestea, trying to get that damage done. Going straight to the main, just dodging right past the spine crawlers. There's a nice baneling hit from Nestea. It's kind of hard to call who's got the favor here, but taking down that third, I feel like is such a huge deal.
I think Snute's got a definitive advantage going forward in this game. The mutas, of course, can't do much offensively with the spore cards of Snute, and his 3 bases at 2.
More lings than banelings heading to the natural expansion here of Nestea, exploding into the mineral line. Lings trying to follow up with some damage as well. Roachwarren going down here from Nestea. Again, Snute trying to maximize the use of those lings and banelings. Infestation Pit is about to finish as well here for Snute. Keeping that third base alive. Spine crawler there, spore crawlers going up as well. But can Nestea get damage done with these mutas? He has to if he wants to get back into this game.
Nestea is going to be looking to put the mutas to cut off reinforcements between Snute's bases, and then whichever base is under-defended, the speedings can run in and take that one out.
All right, let's see what happens here. Snute is going to have a tough time dealing with this. Lings and mutas together really create a formidable force here, going straight into that main base, trying to find things to kill. Spore Crawler is actually getting targeted by the lings. I'm a little bit worried for Snute here. Nestea just has so much. He's using the lings to take out the static defenses and do that damage on the ground, while using the mutas to kind of protect the lings, stay away from the spores, and get that damage done to his opponent's infrastructure.
Oh man, Snute had to use the drones to defend, but he's able to keep 2 of his spore crawlers alive. That should be enough to keep the lair alive. The mutas have found a sweet spot to kill that macro hatchery, but Snute, of course, is again on the counterattack with these speedings, crossing the map, making sure his opponent cannot take a third base. And even if he loses the hatchery, if he can get up enough infestors to finally start, pushing the mutas away from his bases,
yes,
he's going to be in a really good position.
Snagging mutas near a spore crawler with a fungal can be huge. We have another link counterattack coming by here from Snute. Roaches blocking the ramp, blocking the entrance into the main base, saying, "You shall not pass, Mr. Lings." And Nestea going to keep his main base safe, allowing his mutas to continue to try to find those holes in the defenses here of Snute. But Snute starting to get those infestors on the field. Look out for the fungals. They might come through. There's the fungal onto the mutas, and he gets all of them. The queen's coming forward as well. Nestea is going to get away, though, not able to change those fungals perfectly, but 5 more infestors on the way. Nestea has to be very careful not to take too much damage by those fungals.
Once there's 5, 6 infestors out chained properly, they can actually kill every single muta with enough chain fungals. What Snute needs to do now, though, is get up some roaches, because Nestea is starting to send roaches across the map. And, of course, infestors alone have a very difficult time dealing with those roaches.
What about mass lings? They're nicely upgraded. How well is that fair? I feel like if the roaches are isolated enough, that will do sufficient damage to keep them away. But I guess we're going to find out. Nestea coming forward with a lot of mutas, a lot of roaches. Fungal going down onto the mutas and the roaches. The lings trying to get that damage done. Keep in mind, some lings still across the map here from Snute, trying to get that damage done on Nestea's side of the map. But so many infestors with so many fungals available. Snute making 24 lings in production, but Nestea desperately trying to break him.
Oh, the infestors, of course, took out those mutas, but they're out of energy now. The roaches are still swarming forward. He needs to keep those infestors alive. If he loses those, of course, they won't be able to regenerate to energy and be useful later in the game. Spine crawler into action there, but so many roaches from Nestea. Did he find a timing before Snute could get enough forces on the ground?
Yeah, I don't know. Snute is trying to make as many lings as possible, but at what point are you just not going to have enough against those roaches? Infestors all out of energy. More and more roaches coming across the map here from Nestea. Even though Nestea has only been on 2 bases, getting the roach tech out, getting those roaches across the field, and these 1-1 lings just aren't enough. We finally have 7 roaches in production here from Snute, desperately trying to hold against this massive push. Again, if he can keep from losing too many more drones, he has 3 bases up. He's not necessarily out of this.
So many Roaches though. Of course, Snoot's forces rallying one at a time. I don't know if that's going to be enough to deal with this Roach army from Nestea.
He has to get a little bit lucky and hope Nestea somehow, I guess, splits up his forces and makes a mistake. But no, there's the GG from Snute. Unable to handle that Roach switch. And what a fascinating game. I mean, ZVZ, we're all wondering, you know, how is it going to change with that Spore Crawler edition? I think that showed a lot. You mentioned mutas can still be very effective, like on a map like Whirlwind. Snute did a decent job, you know, setting up those defenses, but the mutas were able to still get a decent amount of damage done, and of course, the Roach follow-up was just too strong for Snute to handle.
The really key point in that game, in fact, was the speedlings of Snute, or sorry, of Nestea, excuse me, were actually able to get in and do a lot of damage to Snute's main base, take out a Spore, take out a lot of drones, and that was because the Mulus controlled the rally points between the bases. So, of course, Snute couldn't use the speedlings to defend as they were taken out by that superior air control of Nestea.
Yeah, and it's what an interesting dynamic though, because Nestea was down to 2 bases. Snute had 3. How do you kind of explain why the game went how it did, even though Snute was a base up?
Well, you know, Snute never was able to really drone up that 3rd base, of course. He was on lower econ on 4 hatches, and he really relied on the fact that Zerglings are cheap, and with 4 hatches he could produce a ton of Zerglings. But unfortunately, he lost 2 to 3 queens to the Mulus. He lost the 4th macro hatch to the Mulus, and that really impacted his Zergling production. Imagine if he had 30, 40 more Zerglings when those Roaches came, he probably could have swarmed them over with just the pure speedlings.
Exactly, because everyone's thinking, okay, Lings are never going to face off against Roaches. Those were 1-1 Lings, and if you get enough of those, you can really get a lot of damage done, presuming you can, you know, kind of hold off the Baneling stuff, make sure you avoid those. But guys, that's going to conclude Game 1 of this best of 3. Nestea currently up 1-0. He is 1 win away from advancing to the winner's match. Again, he has yet to drop a game in WCS America, but Snute can still win 2 in a row. Guys, stay tuned. You're watching the round of 16 of WCS America.